What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we have got our Week 11 waiver wire pickups, all the names you need to know. If you enjoy the content, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, check us out online at adpfantasy.com. Become a part of the ADP community. Join the free newsletter. Get early access to exclusive content. Also, become a member and get personalized fantasy advice all season long. All the details in the description, but for now, let's get right into it. We kick things off at the quarterback position with one Derek Carr, who this last week versus the Chargers, 218 yards passing, 1 touchdown. Didn't have to do anything spectacular as that Raiders defense had a good day, but in week 11, a incredibly favorable matchup versus the Cincinnati Bengals, still winless, still helpless on defenses. They got absolutely torched by the Baltimore Ravens. I think Derek Carr can go ahead and have a big day passing. In fact, I believe that the entire Oakland offense will be in store for a great performance. Next up, we've got Philip Rivers, who was a guy that we mentioned here last week, and he had some high expectations versus the Raiders. Ultimately came up short, 207 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. That number could have been higher. Overall, a pretty disappointing performance from Philip Rivers. Week 11, however, he gets the Kansas City Chiefs, who defensively haven't been able to stop anyone. And that means there's going to be a lot of opportunities for Philip Rivers to sling it around. That doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be in a victory, but we saw that Mahomes and that offense are as potent as always, so we know there's going to be points scored there. The Chiefs' defense haven't stopped anyone on the ground, really through the air, so I anticipate a lot of opportunities and a lot of potential for Philip Rivers in a bounce-back performance in Week 11. Our third and final quarterback is Kyle Allen of the Panthers, who this last week at Green Bay in the snow on the road, 307 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. There were some good things, there were some bad things, but there is another favorable matchup in Week 11 versus the Atlanta Falcons. And even though the Falcons had a nice performance versus the New Orleans Saints, really shut down that entire offense, I do believe that was more of a one-off, as not only for the Saints offense, but also for the Falcons defense, which pretty much the entirety of the year has been getting taken advantage of. Now, for Kyle Allen, I believe he's got the weapons to go ahead and put up some points versus the Falcons. This is an NFC South showdown. Historically, they are fairly high scoring. I believe it's going to be a back and forth game between two very beatable defenses. Getting to our running backs, we start with the must-add name here in Brian Hill of the Falcons, as Devonta Freeman exited the game versus the Saints early on. Hill went on to receive the bulk of the carries, 20 carries for 61 yards, and now incredibly favorable matchup versus the Carolina Panthers that were absolutely gouged by the Green Bay rushing attack. Hill is that next man up. There really isn't anyone else. Ito Smith on IR. Kenyon Barner is seldomly used. So I believe Brian Hill, at this point in time, incredibly valuable pickup, could be a mid RB2 type of play in Week 11. Our second and final running back is J.D. McKissic of the Lions. And at this point, it is absolutely a waste field for the Lions at the running back position. Obviously, no Kerryon Johnson, but Ty Johnson exits Week 10 with a concussion. And at this point, McKissic is that next man up. And this is more so of a PPR addition, because even though McKissic did have 10 rushes for 36 yards, which is nice to see in terms of volume, I guess, it's more so the 6 receptions for 19 yards. Obviously, didn't do a whole lot of it in terms of yards per catch, but the opportunity was there. I do like McKissic in PPR formats. There's some other running backs mentioned here, guys like Darius Geis and Kareem Hunt, but these guys probably were added a couple weeks ago. So Brian Hill and J.D. McKissic, the two most widely available running backs for Week 11. Moving on to our wide receivers, we start with Darius Slayton, the breakout rookie from Week 10. 10 receptions for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Giants, as they were missing guys like Evan Ingram and Sterling Shepard, and they went up versus the Jets. So this type of performance, to some extent, was a possibility. The problem here, obviously, you have a big time performance like this, and then this guy is on a bye week. So even though a lot of people might be chasing the points and might be looking forward to Slayton, obviously he's not an option in week 11. Maybe you go ahead and just add him for the sake of having him in week 12 if guys like Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram miss again. But that's where the value comes here. If those guys in the pass catchers for the Giants, the experienced guys like Shepard and Ingram, continue to miss games, then Slayton will continue to be an option moving forward. Next, we've got Will Fuller of the Texans. The Texans were on bye this week, and Fuller has missed several weeks with injury, but he supposedly did practice on Monday, and now the Houston Texans will be facing the Baltimore Ravens come Sunday, so that has a potential for a high-scoring affair. And Will Fuller is that big play threat. He's more reliable than Kenny Stills. He's got more chemistry with Deshaun Watson. He's done more so than Kenny Stills at this point in the season. Even both guys have been injured. Will Fuller has been more so of that wide receiver 2 for that offense. The big thing here will be monitoring the status going forward closer to Sunday. But if he's available, he's one of these boomer bust guys that maybe you want to take a chance on if you really need help at the wide receiver position. Our next wide receiver is Cole Beasley of the Bills, who these last couple of weeks has been putting together good performances, whether it's via touchdowns or with good yardage outputs. This last week, 4 receptions for 74 yards, and in week 11, he gets the Miami Dolphins. Need we really say any more than that? This Dolphins defense can be beat. It has been beat, and Cole Beasley is one of these nice guys. A slot wide receiver that will get targets, that will get opportunities, more so maybe of a PPR addition here. He will be to some extent touchdown dependent, but again, it's hard not to like multiple guys on the Bills offense when they go up versus the Miami Dolphins. Our last wide receiver is Mecole Hardman of the Chiefs, and talk about boom or bust definition here. 1 reception for 63 yards and a touchdown last week. But Mecole Hardman is the number 2 wide receiver for Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes is now back under center, so this offense automatically becomes more potent. And the reason I like Hardman here is because a matchup versus the LA Chargers in week 11, I believe, will produce a lot of scoring opportunities. And with that poor Kansas City defense, the Chiefs offense will have to put up points in bunches. So I do believe, again, similar to a Will Fuller, but obviously the status, the health of Mecole Hardman is a lot better. If you're looking for one of these boomer bust guys that can go for 3 receptions, 100+ yards, and a touchdown, Hardman could be that guy in week 11. Getting to our tight ends, we start with Noah Fant of the Broncos, a guy that we discussed last week, and we said, go ahead, add him, but mostly if you have the space to spare. If not, and he's still available off of waivers, great. You took the risk. It paid off. He's still there. And especially now in a scenario where some big name tight ends are hurt. Austin Hooper, a George Kittle. Fant, the last time we saw him take the field, he went for over 100 yards and a touchdown. He could be that safety blanket for Allen, a young quarterback, while Joe Flacco is still out. Next, we have got the duo of Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron. Cheating here a little bit, but both these guys somewhat viable. Jack Doyle last week, 3 receptions for 44 yards and a touchdown, while Eric Ebron, 5 receptions for 56 yards. The reason we're listing both of them here is because T.Y. Hilton is still out. He's expected to miss another week or so, and at that point in time, Doyle and Ebron, both valuable. Both will continue to get more opportunities, more looks, and one of these guys will end up being a recipient of a red zone touchdown more than likely. The matchup versus the Jacksonville Jaguars isn't a horrible one, and with Jacoby Brissett set to more than likely return, I like the upside of both Doyle and Ebron. Finally, getting to our defenses, there are a lot of options this week. We start with the Pittsburgh Steelers, probably the most unlikely one to still be available off of waivers, but the Steelers have been absolutely killing it defensively in fantasy these last few weeks. Week 10 was no exception, and in Week 11, they've got a divisional clash versus the Cleveland Browns that, even though they won, they've been struggling offensively. I think this is going to be another good 10-plus point type of performance from the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 11. Next, we have got the New York Jets, who had a pretty good performance versus the Giants in Week 10, and now have got the Washington Redskins in Week 11. And the reason I like this contest for the Jets defense is because Dwayne Haskins was declared the starting quarterback for Washington for the remainder of the season. To me, he is not the best option they have offensively, so that means they will be limited and there will be more opportunities for the Jets defense. I think the rookie will be mistake prone, so I look for several turnovers and for a good performance from the Jets. Next, we've got the Minnesota Vikings, who play the Denver Broncos in Week 11. The Vikings defense is legit. They bottled up Ezekiel Elliott in Week 10, and I think they will give fits to the second string quarterback in Brendan Allen of the Denver Broncos. Even though the Broncos were victorious versus the Browns the last time they took the field, this Vikings defense is on another level. This Vikings team is on another level. I think they come out to a big lead that'll force the Denver Broncos to throw and to commit several turnovers. I like the Vikings in Week 11. Continuing on, we have got the Oakland Raiders, and after a great performance versus the Chargers last week, they get the helpless Cincinnati Bengals in Week 11, and with the Bengals incapable of doing anything offensively, and with them now without Andy Dalton, who even though he gives them the best chance to win, that doesn't matter. They got dominated by the Baltimore Ravens defense. Even though the Ravens have some more skill defensively, I still think the Raiders can take advantage of this absolutely awful Bengals offense and get you some decent points. Our final defense of the week is the LA Rams. They had a good performance versus the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 10, and now they've got another great opportunity in Week 11 versus the Chicago Bears. And the Bears, even without a guy like Matthew Stafford for the Detroit Lions, they weren't all that impressive offensively, even with the struggling Detroit defense. This Rams defense is on another level. I expect Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald to absolutely terrorize the Chicago Bears. Mitchell Trubisky will be in store for a long day. I think this will be a close, low-scoring affair where Trubisky's true colors come out and he commits several turnovers. So with that, we wrap things up, and as always, let me hear it in the comment section. Were there names that you agreed, disagreed with, guys that we didn't mention that you're looking into, along with any other fantasy questions you guys might have? And if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, and again, check us out online at adpfantasy.com. Get that additional help in fantasy and picking your games for NFL bets. All the details in the description, but for now, we'll see you guys in future videos.